Welcome to the Dare County Board of Commissioners meeting for Monday, October the 5th, 2020. At this time, I'd like to introduce an invocation by the Reverend Thomas E. Wilson. Let us be still for a moment to reflect on who we are and what we are doing at this meeting. We are living as a gift of grace on this, the goodliest land under the cope of heaven. We have been blessed beyond measure, and we are called to be a blessing to this community, its residents and guests, past, present, and future. We give thanks for those who daily work so faithfully for this county of Dare. And today, we express our appreciation for those who have reached milestones of service. We give thanks for those who have worked performing essential services in this county, state, and nation. We are aware that we are in an election season, and we pray, we honor, and respect even those with whom we disagree. We are all called to remember we are all in this together. We are aware that flooding, weathering storms, and maladies of body, such as breast cancer and COVID, know no party affiliation. We ask for wisdom and patience, for we are all in this together. Together, let we continue to faithfully dream and work together, trusting in a power greater than ourselves, redeeming all things. Amen. Amen. May we stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. County Manager, that completes the prayer and the pledge.
Chairman, item 1 on the agenda is the chairman's opening remarks.
Thank you, County Manager. Most of you, I hope you have been able to see this. What an exciting last Monday it was, Monday the 28th. To see the demolition begin on the old middle school in Dare County in Manteo. There's a photo up there this morning of that first few bricks that were knocked down. And as a matter of fact, we've asked the contractor, the demolition contractor, to save a bunch of those individual bricks. I just put one in my office this morning to save. If those of you out there that would like one, we'll certainly find a way to make sure that you get it. But a new era has begun in Manteo, and we're really, this board has stepped up to the plate, and we're really excited to see this come down and a new campus established, Dare COA campus in Manteo. So stay tuned. I know last Monday they started tearing it down, and it's just been a week, and it's phenomenal to see how much of the structure's already been taken down and metal put in one pile and bricks and so forth put in the other. So they're moving along quite rapidly on that demolition. This is Fire Prevention Week. The President has proclaimed October 4 through October 10 as Fire Prevention Week. I just want to take an opportunity to thank the many volunteers and career workers in the fire industry, and thank them for all the things that they have done. This year's theme is fire safety in the kitchen. And when I read this, it was hard to believe, but they say that they said that 49% of all home fires are involved cooking equipment. And so that's a huge percentage of almost 50% of all home fires are dealing with kitchen equipment. So the fire prevention folks are saying keep a close eye on what you're cooking, and keep anything that certainly could catch fire, such as oven mitts or wooden utensils or towels or anything like that. Keep them at least 3 feet away from your stovetop. And certainly be alert, if you're sleepy or if you've certainly consumed alcohol, certainly don't use the stovetop. During Fire Prevention Week, we're reminded to keep doing our part to prevent fires before they tragically claim lives and destroy homes, businesses, and our natural resources. We also commend our nation's brave firefighters and emergency workers who risk their health on a daily basis. And we need to remember those who gave their lives in service to protect Americans in our communities. We've seen more than 43,500 wildfires, lost more than 10,000 buildings, and 35 people have tragically died in the western states. More than 30,000 firefighters, the largest deployment in our history, have battled these fires. So as you've seen on TV, it's a pretty horrible sight out west. Flags, certainly if you have a flag, you should fly it at half staff for the fallen firefighters, if you will. This week I have asked 5-on-5, which is 5 individuals from the school board and 5 of our folks from the county, those 5 being the chairs of each board, the county manager, their superintendent, their finance officer, our finance officer, and 2 of their board members and 2 of our board members to hold a 5-on-5 meeting, and that'll be held October the 6th at 4 p.m. We haven't met in some time, and we're just meeting to be brought up to date on the school board's decisions and what they face moving forward with this pandemic. We've also seen an extension of the state of emergency for COVID-19 issued by the governor. County manager, would you mind sharing that with us, if you would, please?
Yes, sir. This is an extension of state of emergency for COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the governor of North Carolina declared a state of emergency on March 10th, 2020, and has issued multiple statewide executive orders to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the state. And whereas on March 16th, 2020, Dare County declared a state of emergency due to the unprecedented public health threat posed by COVID-19, a life-threatening communicable disease that had been found in North Carolina. And whereas Dare County declared additional restrictions and prohibitions on March 17th, 2020, March 20th, 2020, and March 28th, 2020. And whereas Dare County amended, rescinded, and or added additional restrictions and prohibitions on April 21st, 2020, May 6th, 2020, and June 19th, 2020. And whereas Dare County aligned all local restrictions, prohibitions, effective dates with those contained in executive orders issued by the governor of North Carolina. And whereas on September 30th, 2020, the governor of North Carolina issued executive order number 169 establishing restrictions to protect lives during the COVID-19 pandemic, phase 3. That becomes effective at 5:00 p.m. on October 2nd, 2020, and will be in place until 5 p.m. on October 23rd, 2020. Now, therefore, pursuant to the authority vested in me as the chairman of the Dare County Board of Commissioners and pursuant to Article 1A, Chapter 166A of the North Carolina General Statutes and Chapter 92, Emergency Management of the Dare County Code of Ordinance, and with the consent of the mayors of the towns of Duck, Southern Shores, Kill Devil Hills, Nags Head, and the Manio mayor's designee, the state of emergency in Dare County is extended to 5:00 p.m. on October 23rd, 2020, and all individuals and businesses in Dare County shall adhere to the provisions of all statewide executive orders issued by the governor of North Carolina until modified, extended, or rescinded. I hereby order this declaration be distributed to the news media and other organizations calculated to bring its contents to the attention of the general public, to be filed with the clerk of the Dare County Board of Commissioners, to be posted conspicuously on the Dare County website, to be submitted to the state's web EOC Critical Incident Management System, and to be distributed to others as necessary to ensure proper implementation of this declaration. This declaration is entered the second day of October 2020 and as ordered by the governor shall remain in effect until 5 p.m. on October 23rd, 2020, unless modified, extended, or rescinded. Declared Robert L. Woodard, Jr., Chairman, Dare County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, County Manager. Another milestone, just this past Saturday. COA celebrated 60 years, their 60-year anniversary, Dare campus, the oldest community college in the state of North Carolina.
60.
That was, they did that virtually, so another great milestone for COA.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I could go back to County Manager Outen for just a moment on the recent, he just read the resolution.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I just want to point out there are really only 3 items of significance that changed under the order. One, outdoor facilities with more than 10,000 seating capacity may open at 7% capacity limit, not 8%, not 6, 7. I just want to emphasize the scientific evidence behind the determination of the 7%. Gaming establishments may open at lower capacity, a reduced capacity, and hotels and conference sites that have receptions and meetings may also open at reduced capacity. I just wanted to point out these updates from our governor's office in Raleigh. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. 2020 census, another reminder for our citizens, has been extended until the end of October. And is that not correct, Public Information Officer Ms. Hester? Is that correct? So please, those of you, you've got a little bit of reprieve here, a little extra time until the end of October to complete the census. It's critical. It's critical for funding for counties and states. So please, if you haven't done this, please complete that. But
It only takes less than 5 minutes.
yeah, it won't even take 5 minutes. Thank you, Commissioner House. Absolutely. And that's proprietary information. It's not shared with anyone. So please do your duty to try to respond to that. I received a letter from Secretary Michael Regan just recently expressing his appreciation for our board's strong and dependable partnership with DEQ. We've contributed to protecting the health and safety of all North Carolinians, and for that we're proud and grateful. He mentions that North Carolina is historically known for business leaders and public officials who work together to build a better future. We're all committed to a similar mission to make North Carolina the best in the nation. Together we can continue to provide environmental protection, create jobs, and strengthen the economy to drive North Carolina's global competitiveness. Without your board's vision and innovation and leadership, we would not be the agency we are today. And he's just thanking us for our partnership and for all that we do for the state of North Carolina. And that was sent by Secretary Michael Regan. The county manager and I, this past week, had an opportunity to just ride down to Hatteras and survey the NC 12, the conditions on 12. As most of you are aware, 12 was shut down for like 6 days due to the damages occurred from the storm that was miles off our coast. And as we've said this numerous times, the flooding and the damage to 12 from our dune lines seem to be or will continue to be the norm anymore. And I'd like to just personally thank NCDOT for their tireless efforts in getting 12 open up as quickly as possible. Under conditions, I think we were told in some cases there was 6+ feet of sand just on 12 alone. So that's a time consuming problem that NCDOT has, and they work very, very diligently and extremely hard to get 12 opened up as quickly as possible. The county manager and I have reached out to our NCDOT representative and asked to have a meeting with them as soon as we can to try to look at, as well as the park superintendent to join us because their properties are affected as well, to see if we can talk about future and what can be done long-term to try to eliminate some of this and the damages that occur from storms. So we'll be hopefully meeting with them in the next few weeks to sit down and do some planning for long-term, hopefully, solutions. On October the 14th, once again, another great opportunity for us here in Dare. There will be a ribbon-cutting ceremony at 1:30 at COA for the new expanded welding space located in the Arts Building on the Dare COA campus. For most of you, I've said this in my state of the county, our trades are important. We need our trades, and this board has graciously agreed to include them in the guarantee scholarship program that we have for our students at our high schools moving into either the trades or trying to get an associate's degree. And this is huge for us. The welding program is just, they work really, really close and get on-site training at our ferry docks, ferry division shops in Wangees to learn that trade. I've said this all along. There's over 400,000 welding opportunities throughout the United States of America, some 400 just in North Carolina and some 17,000 in Virginia. And these folks that go through these programs, and I mean this is huge for a profession. I mean you can make 6 figures in that field. So this is great for our kids graduating that want to attend, and our Dare campus has built it up so much that we've had to expand this program. So look forward to that on the 14th at 1:30 to do that ribbon cutting at COA. And then certainly last but not least, I have a video that our emergency manager and his group of folks put together to educate our public, and I'd like to show that video this morning. It was well done, and we're getting great reviews about it. So, Matt, if you'll share that with us.
On this delicate sandbar, emergencies happen every day and tough decisions need to be made. Most days, those decisions are made by first responders who take action and solve problems quickly using the authority and resources they have at hand. But what happens when an emergency exceeds their capabilities or has the potential to bring widespread impacts to a town or across the entire county? Impacts could come from anywhere: a storm, a man-made disaster, a public health crisis, an act of terror, civil unrest, or a chemical release, just to name a few. When we are facing widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property, how are decisions made to keep our communities safe?
In North Carolina, counties and towns operate under authority granted by state statute. For emergencies, North Carolina General Statute 166A, the Emergency Management Act, provides the authority and responsibility that local governments have to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. The Act defines an emergency as an occurrence or imminent threat of widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property resulting from any natural or man-made threat or hazard. Counties are responsible for emergency management efforts to include coordinating activities with towns. To meet this responsibility, counties and towns establish emergency management agencies, expend funds to keep people and property safe, implement emergency management plans, provide emergency management response resources, and declare local states of emergency when needed to ensure public health and safety. The county or a town will declare a local state of emergency when they believe an emergency exists or is imminent. In Dare, each town in the county have an emergency management ordinance that designates the authority to declare a state of emergency to the town's mayor, the chair of the Board of Commissioners, or their designee. While these individuals have the authority to declare a state of emergency and impose prohibitions and restrictions, they need the best information available to make the best possible decisions to protect public health and safety.
When an emergency has occurred or is looming on the horizon, we turn to our emergency operations plan. The plan, required by Chapter 92 of the Dare County Code, provides a framework that brings decision makers, subject matter experts, and others together to share information and coordinate decision making. In the plan, we use the term senior leaders to identify decision makers who have the authority to declare a local state of emergency and impose restrictions and prohibitions. The term is also used to describe others who have authorities they can use independently to protect public health and safety. The National Park Superintendent and the Dare County Sheriff have authorities outside of the Emergency Management Act, making them key senior leaders who routinely collaborate and coordinate actions with the chair of the Dare County Board of Commissioners and our town mayors.
When challenges arise and actions are needed to ensure public health and safety, our senior leaders, along with other key personnel, come together. They meet either in person or virtually and receive briefings from subject matter experts on what to expect, ways to mitigate impacts, and how best to protect our community.
While we always focus on ensuring public health and safety, we never set aside how actions taken impact business and community activities. Often, senior leaders will reach out to key partners and community leaders to gather information and keep them informed as tough decisions are made. Depending on the circumstance, a state of emergency may be declared. While no one wants to impose prohibitions and restrictions, we know that without them, those we serve may be put unnecessarily in harm's way. While each senior leader has independent authority, either from the Emergency Management Act or other statutes that allows them to take actions on their own, they always strive to reach consensus. Once decisions are made, they are captured in a written state of emergency declaration that is quickly communicated to the public and implemented. As the situation changes, decision makers are briefed, and if changes are needed, the declaration is updated with prohibitions and restrictions being added or removed. These efforts continue until the emergency no longer threatens public health and safety. When an emergency crosses jurisdictional boundaries or is anticipated to bring widespread impacts to the county, a state of emergency may be signed by the chair of the Board of Commissioners, outlining all decisions and detailing who provided consent. Often, towns will issue their own declaration signed by their mayor. At times, a declaration may be issued by just the county or a town.
Just like the everyday decisions made by a lifeguard, a law enforcement officer, a firefighter, an emergency medical technician, or a 911 call taker to save lives and protect property, senior leaders are empowered to take action to ensure public health and safety when our community is facing widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property. These are tough decisions made with the best information available from subject matter experts and key stakeholders that lead to actions that protect our community until emergency conditions are no longer present. For more information, visit www.darenc.com/emergency management.
Well done, Drew. Really, really good information for our citizens out there. And hopefully everyone will be able to take a time to look at that and view that. It's well written, well done, and a very good piece for our citizens. So thank you again for doing that. County Manager, that completes Chairman's comments.
Chairman, item 2 on the agenda is the public comment, and we'll wait just a second to see if we get any public comment.
Okay. Ready?
Ready. That leads us to item 3 on the agenda. This is the presentation of the county service pins. As you know, each month we try to recognize our county employees for their service and their time that they've devoted to the county. And it's a nice time to give our employees some recognition. With the COVID-19, we've gone through and I've read the little narrative for each one, and that's kind of boring. And so we tried to make it a little bit better, and we've done a little video. So this morning, we're going to take this piece, and I think Matt's going to run a video that is a narrative, but lets us see the people that we're recognizing as well, and hopefully give them a little better recognition than just me standing up there reading to you all. So, Matt, if you would go forward with that. First, I have Chuck Budd. Chuck's a water treatment plant superintendent for the Dare County Water Department's Joseph McMidget Water Treatment Plant, and he has 10 years of service. As a graduate of RG Drage with a certificate in machine trades, Chuck moved to Dare County in 2010, became a water treatment plant operator at the Joseph McMidget Water Treatment Plant, which serves the villages of Rodanthe, Wave, Salvo, and Hatteras Island. In 2013, he received his certification for an A-well water treatment, and soon after that, he also earned cross-connection and distribution certifications. In 2017, Chuck advanced to the position of superintendent of the Joseph McMidget Water Treatment Plant. Congratulations, Chuck, and thank you for your service to Dare County. Next, we have Mike Ferguson. Mike's a distribution systems specialist for the Dare County Water Department in our northern beaches, and he too has 10 years of service. Mike is very thorough about the quality and details of his work. He is conscientious about his job and task performance. He holds a C distribution certification and has become very knowledgeable about the distribution system in his daily work. Mike is never hesitant to be the first to jump in on an excavated area to assist with a leak repair. He's a very good hands-on person and likes to get the job done. Mike provides assistance to his teammates during work hours as well as after hours for emergency water leak repairs, and he can successfully operate the newly purchased vacuum equipment. Mike is also an asset in the department because of his previous experience working with concrete and asphalt and making repairs in areas that had to be open cut. He provides professional service and presents a positive disposition when interacting with customers. Mike has been complimented several times over the past year for his courteous service. Congratulations, Mike, and thank you for your service to Dare County. Next is Angie Hooper. Angie is an administrative specialist for the Solid Waste Management Department of the Dare County Public Works, and Angie has 15 years of service. She began working for Dare County Public Works 15 years ago as a parts warehouse clerk in the Fleet Maintenance Division. She has since transferred to the Solid Waste Management Department where she works as an administrative specialist. Angie has become an integral part of the Dare County Public Works team. She gives 100% and is continually commended for her willingness to go above and beyond in providing excellent customer service to all. Congratulations and thank you, Angie, for your hard work and dedication to Dare County. Next is Karen Patton. Karen's a social worker too for the Department of Social Services, and she's receiving her 20-year pin. For 2 decades, Karen has devoted her time and energy to serving the most vulnerable population in our community. Karen is kind and compassionate, and she cares about each one of the citizens she serves through our many programs. Karen's knowledge and experience make her an exceptional worker. She is always empathetic and genuine in her work with her clients. Thank you, Karen, for your continued hard work and your dedication to our adult service clients in Dare County. Next is Eric Pfeiffer. Eric's an advanced EMT for Dare County Emergency Medical Service, and he has 25 years of service. Eric grew up outside of Sleepy Hollow, New York. In 1983, he joined a local volunteer fire department. He decided to further his training, and in 1984, he became certified as an EMT. Eric moved to the Outer Banks in 1986 and began working for the Kill Devil Hills Fire Department. In 1995, he began working for Dare County as an EMT, and 1 year later, he obtained his advanced EMT certification. Eric lives in Kitty Hawk with his wife, Kristen, a son, Brody, and a daughter, Ainsley. Being a husband and dad, along with having a busy work schedule, means Eric doesn't have a chance to hit the golf course as much as he used to. However, he loves spending time with his children and enjoys being an active part of their lives. Eric continues to enjoy reporting to work every day, and after 25 years, he still sees new things every day. Congratulations and thank you, Eric, for your 25 years of service to Dare County. And then last, we have Sissy Campbell. Sissy is an administrative specialist for the Roanoke Island Mainland Division of Parks and Recreation Department. She has 25 years of service. Sissy was hired in 1995 as a secretary for the Dare County Parks and Recreation Department, and she was promoted to the Office of Support Specialist in 2000. She is currently the administrative specialist for the Dare County Parks and Recreation Department at the Roanoke Island Mainland Division. Sissy always comes to work with a smile, and she is the first person to greet you when you come to the office. Whether someone wants to sign up for Parks and Recreation activities, register to use the dog park, reserve the swimming hole, or just has a general question about Parks and Recreation, Sissy's there to help. She also handles phone calls, the scheduling of facilities, monetary transactions, and the filing of paperwork. She purchases supplies and handles the recreation software, allowing citizens to register for activities online. Sissy is always willing to help, even if it requires weeknight or weekend work. She is ready to jump in whenever it is needed, whether it's helping out in an Easter egg hunt, or filling in for dance or gymnastic programs, working weekend tournament, or collecting tickets at a dance recital. Most, if not all, of the visual materials the office produces, including newsletters, programs, bracket boards, signs, and posters, have the Sissy touch. Thank you, Sissy, for all your hard work serving the citizens of Dare County for 25 years, and we hope that you have many more. Congratulations, and thank all of you for your dedication to our community and for your continued service to Dare County.
County Manager, that was an excellent summary. I like that a lot. That's a great upgrade.
Thank you.
I agree, that's the way we should do it.
You need to thank Dorothy and her
Thank you,
team.
Doris. I suspected as much.
That's terrific.
So yeah, we think that's much better, and I hope that the employees recognize that we appreciate them, and maybe that's a little more special than what we've been doing. So,
Very good. Thank you, County Manager.
in this item, we also have another special presentation, and the chairman will make that one. Or are you going to do it, Drew?
Drew's
I'm
going
sorry.
to do that.
Drew will do it.
With the help of the chairman, maybe.
Okay.
Chairman, Commissioners, thanks for allowing me to come forward. I want to say the same thing that Bobby said to Dorothy and her staff regarding that video she did. Dorothy and her staff and Current TV and everybody else that helped with the emergency decision-making
Yeah,
video.
that was excellent too, Drew.
I wouldn't have been able to do that
Excellent.
without their help, and it turned out very well, I believe. And I think it'll demystify some things which are important for us. But today I come to you to talk about the guy that did the voiceover part. That's James Wooten. James has been recognized as a certified emergency manager by the International Association of Emergency Managers. James joins about 2,200 emergency managers worldwide who have completed the rigorous process that leads to certification. To achieve certification, all CEMs must have over 3 years of comprehensive emergency management experience, have practical experience during exercises, major public events, and actual disasters, complete at least 6 professional contributions, and hold a baccalaureate degree. And James holds not just a baccalaureate, but a master's degree. They must write a comprehensive essay and pass an examination demonstrating knowledge on all phases of emergency management. They must be recommended by 3 practicing emergency managers. Certification by IAEM is the gold standard in the emergency management profession. It shows the individual has the ability to effectively manage a comprehensive emergency management program, a working knowledge of all phases of emergency management, including mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, has experience and knowledge of interagency and community-wide efforts designed to improve emergency management capabilities, and has the ability to effectively accomplish emergency management goals and objectives with little or no additional training. James has worked hard since he joined us, not just us, he's been with the county a while, but joined us in emergency management 15 months ago. He's been making a difference as we've updated plans, managed response and recovery efforts during several storms, coordinated planned events, and continued to support Dr. Davies during the ongoing pandemic. Even with a busy work tempo and raising a young family, James undertook and completed certification, setting himself apart from his peers while bringing great credit to himself and Dare County. James, if you'd come on up here and socially distance with me, and we'll give you this. Chairman, would you join us in the picture?
James, you've become pretty notorious down in Hatteras. Thank you. They got you on speed dial.
Let me just say that was startling what our emergency manager just said. 2,200 worldwide. Do the math, come on, Rob, do the math.
Pretty impressive.
That's incredible.
Pretty impressive.
2,200 to reach this category worldwide, that's pretty awesome.
Thanks, sir.
This is presented by the International Association of Emergency Managers. Has conferred upon James Wooten, certified 2020, the designation of Certified Emergency Manager, CEM, for meeting criteria in the area of references, experience, education, training, contributions to the professional, and essay examination relevant to emergency management. Maintenance of the CEM occurs every 5 years. So we got little blocks on here every 5 years, James. You gotta step up to the plate, right? So I don't have any problems that recognize the fact that you can do that if you pass this. So that's gonna probably be a piece of cake to you, but congratulations, that's pretty awesome.
Thanks, sir.
Very strong, James.
Amen. Thank you, Drew.
That's pretty special.
While they're seated, you all don't know how important it is to have James. We haven't always had James, and having the depth at emergency management when we have an emergency, when we activate, when we have one of these events that goes on for 10 days or 2 weeks and we're all over there all that time, having someone with experience, someone that's calm, someone that has knowledge, someone that can articulate what we're doing and why we're doing it, all of those things help that operation run smooth. Drew has to sleep sometime, and Drew has to go home sometime, and so having depth there to help him and to help Steve as we go through that is a tremendous asset for the county when we activate. So thank you for all that, James. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and this is the Dare County Department of Health and Human Services proclamation for National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And with your permission, I'll read that proclamation.
Yes, sir, please.
This is a proclamation declaring October 2020 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of cancer deaths among women in the United States. Whereas over 6,000 North Carolina women will be diagnosed with breast cancer and over 1,000 will die from the disease. Whereas the age-adjusted death rate for breast cancer in Dare County is 21.9 compared to 21.6 in North Carolina and 21.2 in the U.S. Whereas every woman is at risk for breast cancer, even if she has no family history of the disease, but women over the age of 50 are at the greatest risk for being diagnosed with breast cancer. Whereas a mammogram is the single most effective method of detecting breast changes long before physical symptoms that may be cancer can be seen or felt. Whereas October is designated as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas the pink ribbon is the internationally recognized symbol of breast cancer awareness. Whereas community organizations, churches, synagogues, and other places of worship and work sites can play an important role in educating the community about breast cancer. Now, therefore, the Dare County Board of Commissioners does hereby recognize October 2020 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The Board of Commissioners encourages the residents to wear pink ribbons in recognition of breast cancer and in honor of women who are now courageously fighting the battle with breast cancer. The board further encourages women to consult with their health care providers about regular screening and to promote early detection of breast cancer by having regular clinical breast examinations, getting regular mammograms, and practicing monthly breast self-examinations. This the 5th day of October 2020.
Move to approve.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner House to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ross. Any further discussion? I'd just like to say my wife and I very unfortunate to lose her sister at age 52 to breast cancer. I encourage all of those of you out there today listening to this. One of the whereases says a mammogram is the single most effective method of detecting breast cancer long before physical symptoms that may be cancer. Please, if you're out there and listening to this, please do this as a young lady, a young woman in your life. That is very, very important to do that, and hopefully it will be detected if sooner. That can prevent this horrible tragedy from losing a life over breast cancer. So thank you, Health and Human Services, for doing this proclamation. So.
I would like to echo Mr. Chairman's remarks. Definitely the earliest detection that you can do is the best. As many of you know, I have a daughter who is suffering from breast cancer. And I wish that everyone out there take the time, make sure to catch it as early as possible. Thank you.
And may I add a third re-emphasis, if I may. My wife and I lost her mother at 62. This was a while back, but again, it was a lack of early detection. Could have been treated. Steve, obviously our best to you and your daughter. And it's just a terrible disease, and awareness, early detection, and prompt treatment can do wonders. So I concur with all your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anyone else? Those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Item 5 on the agenda is a request for a public hearing with regard to the revised travel park ordinance. And Donna, if you have something to add to that.
Good morning, Donna. Welcome this morning.
Good morning. As Mr. Outen said, this is a request to schedule a public hearing on the revised travel trailer park ordinance. One of those revisions is the change of the name to the travel trailer park and campground ordinance. In some of our zoning districts, it says campgrounds instead of travel trailer parks, and so we're hoping to clarify that because we use those terms interchangeably sometimes. Earlier this year, the Planning Board began work on revisions to the travel trailer park ordinance, and this was a staff-initiated amendment process. I had been receiving several requests from some existing campground owners as well as some developers to have campgrounds or travel trailer parks that had eco tents or what I'm calling alternative camping units. And the travel trailer park ordinance as it's currently written does not allow for such units. And so since I was continuing to receive those requests to do so, I figured it was time that we looked at the ordinance and maybe update it and allow some provisions in there to have these standards for these alternative camping units and camping cabins. So you'll hear me use those terms probably frequently this morning while I'm up here talking. The travel trailer park ordinance was originally adopted in 1985, so it's been some time since it's been revised a couple of times over the tenure of my tenure with the county, but this is pretty much a major overhaul, if you will. Some of the standards have been updated so that the review process is streamlined and that it follows the review process that we have established for subdivisions. The way that the ordinance is written now, it's very similar to the subdivision review process, and it refers to plats and the recordation of plats. And you don't transfer ownership of campsites as you do lots, and so that's one of the revisions. We've included some definitions. The bulk of the revisions pertain to the standards of the ordinance and this allowance of camper cabins and alternative camping units. We've incorporated standards in there that address how the ordinance can facilitate these in the development of campgrounds. One of those standards is a cap, if you will, or a 50% limit on the number of travel trailer sites and camping sites that are dedicated to the alternative units and the camping cabins. We spent a lot of time talking about that at the planning board when we were reviewing this, and it was a split vote, a 4-3 vote on whether we included this 50% threshold. And so when the planning board was discussing this, they were particular that I make sure that the board understand that it was a 4-3 vote. So there was some discussion on whether there should be a limit or there shouldn't be a limit. Again, it was a 4-3 vote. The overall recommendation for the revisions of the ordinance was unanimous, but there was a split on that one standard. So if you were coming in with a campground today and you had 50 sites total, 25 of those would have to be travel trailer sites. And then if you wanted to do camper cabins or the alternatives, you could. If you just wanted to do all travel trailer sites, then that still remains in there. Some of the other standards we allow for, now there's a 1,500 square foot site size that's in there, and we've changed that. Instead of having them lateral, you can have what we're calling a free-form layout, to where you don't have a 1,500 site limitation. You have separation of 15 feet. So that should allow some flexibility in the development of the sites. We changed the ordinance so that there's some flexibility in employee housing. Right now, it only allows one mobile home for a park manager. The ordinance does recommend that there's a 90-day limit on the tenure of the campsites. You can allow the campers to stay there. They can't be occupied on a year-round basis. And with the ordinance being amended to allow these camper cabins, the planning board felt it was particularly important that we include a limitation on how long the camper cabins could be occupied. They are not designed to serve as year-round occupants, but overnight accommodation or seasonal accommodations. And that 90 days is tied to the North Carolina Vacation Rental Act. There is language in there prohibiting the sale of the individual camping sites. There's standards for the roads have been updated. There is a limit on the size of camper cabins that's included in there, a 600 square foot limit with up to 300 square feet of unenclosed space. We've included standards for stormwater. And we've included standards for the allowance of camping spaces. If you have an existing commercial site and you have some extra space that you don't have dedicated to your parking or your wastewater areas, and you can accommodate some camping spaces in there, the ordinance will allow that. We have put language in there to specifically allow travel trailers following natural disasters that we've had to do in the past. And that's pretty much a summary of the length of the revisions that are in there. Because it is a land use ordinance, before we can adopt it, there has to be a public hearing on it. One other change that the planning board recommended was to amend the C3 zoning district to add travel trailer parks to that ordinance. It currently does not list that as a specific use. There have been campgrounds approved in the C3 district way back in the early 90s. And it was an interpreted use, and the planning board felt that since we were going through these amendments that it was appropriate to clarify and add that use to the C3. So any public hearing that is scheduled would be a public hearing on the revisions to the travel trailer park ordinance, as well as an amendment to the C3 district. As I stated, the ordinance as it's been recommended by the planning board includes that 50% limit on the mix of the camping sites. There has been public comment from one developer who is recommending that that threshold not be included in the ordinance if it is the desire of the board to consider that as well, then it's my recommendation that we send that option to public hearing as well, so that once we have the public hearing, if the board wants to entertain that option, we don't have to go back and have a second public hearing. So again, the recommendation is to send it to public hearing with the 50% cap as recommended by the planning board, and also to include the alternate language to remove that cap in case we decide to do so after the public hearing. It's better to keep your options open. It's the best way to summarize that, and I'll stop right there.
I'll ask the board if they have any questions.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Donna, what is the, this camping cabins is something that's, this terminology is new to me, but what is the impact of camping cabins beyond the 50% limit, and how do the camping cabins differentiate from what we've always done here normally?
The camping cabin would be a stick-built unit. It would have to be built to North Carolina building codes versus someone bringing their travel trailer or their recreational vehicle to the site. The campground developer would construct the units themselves. They would be permanent structures on the site. They would be part of the infrastructure, and they would be rented out as seasonal accommodations to individuals who might want to have a camping experience, if you will, but not have their own RV or their travel trailer. They, as it's written in the ordinance, they can have kitchen facilities, they can have restroom facilities, so it's a little bit of a different take on your traditional campground. And my research that I did while we were developing the revisions to the ordinance, a lot of the campgrounds, even the ones run by the National Park Service, have a mix of camping cabins in there in addition to the traditional campsites.
Do they have different septic requirements?
No, sir, not to my knowledge. It's still that 120 gallon per person requirement. I'm not sure exactly how that would operate, if you can have, how many camper cabins you can have hooked up to one septic system, but any campground that would come through the review process would need to be reviewed by the Environmental Health Department before they could be operational.
Are these, as a rule, clustered within a campground?
Typically they are. Yes, sir. Typically they are.
Yep.
How could they evolve long-term?
I'm not really sure at this point, and I think that was one reason why the planning board was hesitant not to include a limit on there on the number. I think that based on the comments during the planning board review, there was a concern that if you have a site that's 100% of these camper cabins, which are basically 600 square foot residential structures, that they would function differently than what their intended purpose are if they're not included in a campground. They were concerned that they would be de facto essential housing, and we're hoping to avoid that. And it may be that if we amend the ordinance and we move forward with a couple of these, and it looks like that's an unfounded concern, or that there is a legitimate reason to have campgrounds with no limit on that, then we can come back and amend it. But I think it's better to try to ease into it instead of just open the door wide open, because we have several campgrounds already in existence in Dare County that are large campgrounds, and if the ordinance is adopted without that cap or that threshold, that 50% threshold, then they would have the ability to come in and transition to having all of these camper cabins. And it just seems like the planning board was just hesitant, and staff shares that concern as well. It's, we're dipping our toe in, if you will, instead of diving in.
Without the 50% cap, if that part of it was removed, the whole thing could be camping cabins. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. And what the planning board's, comments were is, if you want to develop a site with small homes that you're going to offer as the owner as seasonal accommodations, then that's fine, but that needs to be reviewed as a group housing development and not as a campground.
Right.
You've touched on exactly my question.
Yeah.
The distinction between the group housing and the park ordinance.
So you've got a marketing thing. You've got a group of people that want to visit the Outer Banks with RVs. And if you allow the RV, if you have campgrounds where they can come, then those people can use their RVs and come to the Outer Banks and visit and participate in what we have to offer. If you allow 100% of those units to be cabins, then you've eliminated that space for the RV person that wants to come, and the opportunity for those people to come goes away. And so by leaving space, you leave opportunities for that segment of the people that want to visit the Outer Banks to have a place to do that. If you allow the whole site to be developed as permanent structures, while there may be a whole segment of people that'll go there, the people that have RVs have nowhere to go.
Any more than they have now.
More than, right, exactly.
And there's, you know, with the COVID and everything, the sales of recreational vehicles have skyrocketed. And so it just so happens that we were starting to amend our ordinance at the right time, apparently. So who knew? Anyway.
I was still on my question. On the very last sentence, the last line of page 9 on our decks, and you've alluded to it, Donna, that if you want a site with small homes to cover the entire, quote, park, then the group housing development standards would apply.
Yes, sir.
Not a mobile home or a mobile travel trailer park ordinance.
Correct.
And again, not trying to put you on the spot. As I read it, I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with the distinction or the differences between those two.
The distinction, the main distinction would be that a campground is considered a commercial use and it has 60% lot coverage.
Yes.
Whereas a residential group housing development is considered a residential use and it would be limited to 30% lot coverage. Now, if it appears that there is this market out there for these camper cabins, we could always come back in and create a special section for that as well under the group development section. But the planning board just didn't feel like it was your traditional campground.
It wasn't, it's
Yeah.
not a campground anymore, it's a small home development.
A cottage
isn't
court
it?
or
Well,
something
if
similar,
you go to
yes.
100%.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes.
I can see both sides,
Yes, sir.
and it's not unprecedented in the United States or in this state to have 100% cabins. It's called glamping. It's kind of a new thing, and there is a big demand for it. And I don't know why the county would, I don't know, make, say, well, we got to have room for RVs. I mean, if there's a big demand for RVs, there's other land in the county that somebody could put an RV park up. And we just had big discussions at our last meeting or the meeting before about some of the issues that these RV parks, where people come in and park their RVs in and then leave. And then we have a storm and they have to be moved, and where do they get moved to? And we don't have a lot of storage facilities to put them at. I mean, there's a lot of issues. It is below flood in some of the areas.
Right.
And these things, these buildings would be built in hurricane standards. They'd be above flood. I mean, they would meet all those requirements, so.
But it's not a campground anymore. It's
not a
Small
campground.
home
Well,
development.
no, it's a camp, but it's not year-round.
It's a small home rental
It's
development.
cabins.
Yeah,
but it's
for
just-
rent, called
yeah.
small home development.
Yeah.
I don't see where it's a travel trailer park.
And the other thing is, it's what the applicant has applied for. The applicant has applied for a campground use. It's not that the county is mandating that these be 100%. I mean, I have several of these insured in Virginia. This is another alternative for those who want to go on vacation that don't want to rent a hotel room, that don't want to rent a home in Airbnb, or who don't want to rent a 24 or 16-foot bedroom on the ocean front. This is another alternative for folks to be able to go to a campground, rent a cabin, and not, as I said, run a hotel room or a 24 or 16-foot bedroom home on the ocean front or an Airbnb home. So it's a great mixture. It's a great mixture for the campground. And, because if you go to the 100%, then it's, it's not a campground.
Again, I would just say, what is the difference between a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom unit rented in, I don't know, Manio or Kill Devil Hills, and a smaller unit for 600 square feet? The only difference is the size.
Right,
It's a rental unit.
right.
Well, it could be argued also that an RV isn't a camp. You're not camping in an RV. I don't know if you guys have been in one or not, but they're probably
them
going to be a
are
lot
pretty elaborate,
fancier
yeah.
than the cabins.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, camping is going out, sleeping under the stars, or being in a tent.
The difference is the transient nature of RV camping, if you will, and these structures. And so you all hit on the arguments. One thing I'll tell you that, and I don't know the answer to this, we have in there that there's limits on the sale, and we have in there that there's limits on length of stay. I'll tell you the Airbnb ordinance that had limits on stay in Buncombe County or Asheville just got set aside. So whether we can actually do that or not, I don't know the answer to that. Similarly, in the condo timeshare arena, if I build a building with 30 units in it and it's an apartment building, and I later decide to condo it, or I later decide, and you can't sell an apartment unit, but if I later decide to condo it, or if I later decide to timeshare it, the law is government doesn't have the authority to say how I own my development. I can own it however I want to own it, because you have no interest in it. A condo that has 500 people in it has the same impact if it's a townhouse with 500 people in it, or apartment with 500 people in it. So there's no governmental interest in regulating how that ownership is. Whether that would carry over into this, where you could condoize or townhouse. I mean, you've got piers, marinas that you can condo a slip and do it. So could you then similarly condo one of these units and have these units for sale or for timeshare or for whatever? I don't know. So I don't know that the restrictions on sale would pass muster. They might, but there is some law in other areas that may be contrary to that. And so if that's significant to you in making the decision, then be aware that that may not be perfectly solid ground.
Donna, just another question. If the 50% rule were to stay in effect as kind of, like you were saying, kind of ease into this thing, and the 50% rule stayed in effect, and as we went along and it looked like it was working out fine, it wasn't any issues here or there, I'm assuming that the balance, the other 50% that are campsites, could evolve into these, that space could be, there's nothing to prohibit those spaces from becoming camping cabins.
No, sir, there isn't, and so that's what I was saying, that if you move forward with a limit on there, and then it appears that we're getting, overwhelmed with requests that, okay, the county, you got it wrong, the 50% rule doesn't make sense, then we could go back in and adjust it. Why 50%? And that's one comment that I've heard during the development of this. And 50% is of threshold that is found throughout land use ordinances. It's the benchmark. And so, that's why 50% was chosen instead of 60 or 40 or 70. And so there's no magic to that number. And the comments that Commissioner Tobin made is the exact comments in the discussion that we had at the planning board. And so, yes, if you have a campground that's approved with this 50%, and then 2 years from now we come in and say we want to remove that governor on, or that cap, then they could go in and build 100% of their sites out with camper cabins if that's what they want to do.
And with the other thing that was mentioned was the boom that's going on currently in RVs, travel
Yes.
homes, whatever you
Yes.
call them. I'm the question in my mind is, why would you want to exclude that population at this point in time?
And again, that's, you know, whatever the market plan is of the developer. Typically, what's attractive about travel trailer parks is that you can go in with a vacant piece of property and, you know, install your infrastructure, your roads, your bathhouse, your water, and then you can use it as a campground. And then if you decide 10 years from then that you want to transition to some other use, there's no buildings per se to take down other than your bathhouse. And so it's a good transitional land use, if you will. And I think with the sales of the RVs that are skyrocketing, that, you know, that you're hearing about in the news, that the 50% cap in there might not be as detrimental as what, you know, some of the public comments that we're hearing. That's just one developer's plan, and we've only heard from him. Now, we may have a public hearing and have 50 people come in here and say that 50% percentage is way off the mark. And if so, then we can remove it. That's why you have public hearing and receive public comment. But the planning board, in their wisdom and their deliberations, felt that a limit of 50% was appropriate.
I'm still confused. If I owned a 5-acre site that's, quote, zoned a travel trailer park, and I want to put up, I make up a number here, 75 cabins, 600 square feet, why can't I do that? Just apply for the group development standards, group housing development.
That's right.
So there's nothing preventing it.
We just,
Density would be different.
we wouldn't be calling it a campground.
That's right. Wouldn't
But
call
I
it-
mean, I can do it. I can apply.
Yes.
The density's half.
Yeah. Your lot coverage is.
No, I heard the
is-
30 and
yeah,
60.
Yeah, and so.
So I simply
and there's-
comply
and
with
there's-
that,
yeah.
and I can do it.
Correct.
So we're not saying you can't do it. It's just that you have a different set of rules, and you can go ahead and do it.
Yeah, but if I can
Correct.
double my units on my land, then I can obviously make a better profit per unit.
Right, because the travel trailer park ordinance has a minimum lot size of 1,500 square feet. And so you could be putting a 600 square foot camper cabin on a 1,500 square foot site, and that's what was concerning to the planning board was if you're going to have a stick-built development of 100% camper cabins, then we think it needs to be on something other than 1,500 square foot sites.
And the lot size in a group development, again, I'm just trying to.
There's a minimum lot size for the overall parcel, and then you go in and you put the cabins in there, and they're separated by 20 feet versus 15, and there's parking and there's roads and there's different standards. The main being 30% lot coverage versus 60% lot coverage.
Is there a minimum lot size in a group housing development?
Not for the individual structures, it's the overall size of the tract. And then you have the footprints that can be transferred in individual ownership, and everything else is in common ownership.
But to address your concern, Commissioner Ross, I mean, you could always say you can go 100%, but if you're going to put permanent units on pylons, then you've got to follow the group housing requirements.
Well, that's where I was confused, because that's where I was
And then you
going.
can do your travel campground or whatever as a group housing and have it a mix of both or not, but you're going to get much less density on the permanent structures than what's proposed in this ordinance.
So I can get a whole lot more travel trailers on my 5 acres than I can individual housing units.
Yes, sir.
Right.
The
But-
way that it's written
yeah,
now.
But wouldn't I, see, I'm trying to follow, again, this logic. Wouldn't I be economically motivated to have more units on my property?
So that was what I was going to come back
I'm
to.
I'm baffled by the
Well,
controversy here, I guess.
So, well, that's because we don't know the market. And that's the answer to your question, Commissioner Overman, when you talk about the boom. And if there's a boom in the RV market and that's where the profit is, then the developer who's doing these campgrounds is going
gonna
to
build
develop his
cabins.
property to meet that demand
Yeah.
because that's where he's going to make his money. On the other hand, if we aren't worried about that part, but we want to encourage travel trailers or RVs as opposed to permanent things, then we set regulations that encourage that, and those two things compete, and that's sort of where your dilemma is.
So Don,
Go ahead, sorry.
so Donna, what's to keep the developer from coming back and changing the group home standards to allow the same amount of intensity that you're talking on a campground?
What's keeping him from
Yeah.
doing that? It's going to be the 30% lot coverage.
And he just writes an ordinance to,
They would, yeah, we would have to
Yeah.
rewrite that ordinance, yes.
for that one use.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking this, because I kind of agree with the manager saying that, I mean, I can tell you right now, last year I was in the market for RV. I was going to buy one of the little small BRVs and run across America and everything in the wintertime. The time frame out from them delivering is March. If I order one today, it'd be March, and there's a waiting list in March for people to get those things. So there's a big demand out there.
Yes.
And my thinking is, and I agree with Jim, there's both sides of the whole thing, but let's see where we're going with what we're doing now. And then he can always come back with a completely tailored ordinance and so forth for what he wants to do, whoever this developer is. And then we just see how it goes first.
So Donna, the first.
Does that make sense?
The first motion then is to, if that motion is made, that means the 50% coverage rule stays in effect, right?
That motion is to schedule a
Schedule
public
public
hearing
hearing.
on the ordinance the way that the planning board recommended it with the 50%
Right.
cap in there. The second motion is to schedule a public hearing as recommended by the planning board and advertise the possibility that that cap may be removed so that there would not be a limitation on the development of camper cabins or the number of camper cabins that could be in a travel trailer park ordinance. My logic being, okay, don't go to public hearing, have comments then, and the board wants to remove that cap, and then you have to go back and have a second public hearing. Just go ahead and advertise it. It's easier to advertise it on the front end than do it on the back end.
But
If that's the pleasure of the board.
Just going off the basis of the discussion, if the board wanted to keep the 50% restriction in place, you would make the first motion.
Take the first
Well,
one.
even advertising both of them, you still have both of the alternatives. So you could have the public hearing and adopt as recommended by the planning board if that's the desire of the board. It's still on the table. You're just keeping your options open as you schedule it for public hearing. You could always adopt it as recommended by the planning board. The fact that you've advertised it, both alternatives with a cap and without a cap, doesn't mean that you can't adopt it as recommended by the planning board.
If, my suggestion is you don't decide what you're going to do today.
Right.
Because that's the purpose of
Yeah.
having the public hearing, to hear what everybody has to
That's
say
right.
prior to making your decision. And if we take that approach, which we should, then the second motion seems appropriate because it makes all options available
Right.
to you. You can make it restrictive, you can make it less restrictive, you can do whatever you want. What the law is that you have a public hearing, and you all have the right to change the ordinance however you want to before you adopt it, no matter what. However, if you make what's called a substantial change, and nobody really knows what that means, but if you make a substantial change to it, you have to have another public hearing before you adopt it with the substantial change. Adding the option that Donna added would prevent somebody from arguing that was a substantial change because you've advertised that you might do that anyway, and so they're on notice, and that gives you that alternative to do it either way you want.
I just had one more question then. If I buy a piece of land in, pick a Manio, and I call it a trailer park, and we adopt this with no cap, why can't I just go in and cover everything with 60% and build little cabins on it?
If the ordinance is adopted without a cap, then that's exactly what you would be allowed to
And
do.
Yeah.
it would then
So
neuter your group development ordinance, because
that's my point. You no longer have a need for it because everyone can declare themselves a travel trailer park and build 60% lot coverage everywhere in the unincorporated areas.
But then it might be
Except-
affordable housing.
Right, well, except we do have the.
Then call it affordable housing. Don't call it a travel trailer park.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Is that wrong?
I did have extensive conversations with with the developer. Extensive. And I did float that idea to him about if he wanted,
As have I.
100%, why not make 50%, the extra 50% that they're not allowing affordable housing and 50% cabins? And he pushed back on that, so.
So the solution to Commissioner Ross's conundrum, if you will, is that you could always say, okay, if we're going to allow more than some threshold on a travel trailer park of permanent structures, then it translates into the group housing and the other density requirements come in. So maybe you allow 100%, but if you're going to do 100%, you got to go to the density requirements of the group home density. But if you only do, I'll make up 30%, then you can use the travel trailer camp density, because the combination of the two densities somehow balances out, if you
Yeah, I
will.
presume there's a density coverage for a reason.
Yes.
There is, isn't there? And that's so every housing development in unincorporated Dare isn't declared a travel trailer park and then covered with cabins.
Correct. Right.
Am I missing something here?
No, you're
No,
right.
No.
So, Don, I got another question. So
Yes, sir.
if we pass this thing with a no cap, then also we're opening the door up for every trailer park to completely redevelop themselves with a small.
Correct.
That's correct.
That is
See,
correct.
that's the problem. I mean, Jim, I got what you're saying, and I talked to the guy too.
I didn't talk to the guy.
Well, I did. I mean, it was, you know, but the problem I have is opening the door up for everything, and I have a problem with that. But we'll see what the public hearing says.
I do too. We-
Question, well, the question then that comes back to you is, if I came in with a piece of land and I said, I'd like to cover this 60% with 600 square foot units. I didn't call it a campground, I didn't call it anything. Would you all let me do that? Is that what you want? If that's okay, then that's okay. If you're comfortable with that density and that's okay, then that's okay. If not, if you think that I should not be able to do that density and I ought to be under the group home, then what you're going to do here is going to neuter the group home ordinance, and you just got to decide what you want.
Does the density include wetlands?
The way that your overall lot coverage is based on you including wetlands in there. So if you have a 100-acre tract, the campground that we just approved a couple of months ago, that was a lot of wetlands. That, you get to base your 60% on that total area, including the wetlands. And
Does this
that's true of the
this
group housing
tract
development
that's
as well.
being looked at is, what, 400 and some acres?
And, you know, I'm always very particular not to try to talk about specifics when we're talking about this, but that's the number that I've heard thrown
I
out
was
as well.
just to
You're
educate
right.
myself.
Then that exacerbates the density
Yeah.
problem even worse, because you're calculating on unusable land, so you're now concentrating it all and
Right.
just on the highway.
I will say that the way that the ordinance is written, if you choose to not use the 1,500 square foot fixed layout and you go with the free form, they have to be 15 feet apart, but there is a density limit in there that is 28 sites per acre, which equates to 1,500 divided into the size of an acre. So there's some logic behind that. But, you know, and that's when you're writing these ordinances, you know, you have to think of all of the potentials and not just what one is because we're making rules that's going to apply through all of unincorporated Dare County, and they can be retroactively applied in some of these existing campgrounds. And so it'll be interesting to see if some of those campground operators out there come in and submit revisions to their original plans, depending on us, you know, whatever we get adopted. I'm assuming that we're going to adopt something if we send something to public hearing, though. So.
All right, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing as recommended by the planning board and with a second option of no cap on the number of camping cabins. I move the draft trailer park and campground ordinance and C3 text amendment be scheduled for public hearing on October 19th. I further move that an option to delete the 50% camping cabins be advertised also.
There's a motion on the floor for, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? So we'll schedule a public hearing for October 19. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Donna.
Chairman, that brings us to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes. We have a lease for the Dare County Wilkenson Street building for the Highway Patrol, and we have a DHHS Social Services Division COVID APS CPS Essential Worker Funding Amendment.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Tobin. It was seconded by Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Go ahead.
Okay. Item 7 is your upcoming board appointments. I'm going to give you the list of the upcoming board appointments for the next 3 months, and so that anyone that wanted to participate by becoming a member of these boards could send Cheryl an application, and we'll put it on the list as you all try to fill these vacancies. In November, you have the Older Adult Services Advisory Council. There's 1 term expiring there. In December, you have the Equalization and Review Board. There's 5 terms expiring there. The Nursing Home Community Advisory Council, there's 1 term expiring there. The Parks and Recs Advisory Council, there's 1 term expiring there. And the Special Motor Vehicle Evaluation and Review Committee, there are 3 terms expiring on that committee. In January, you have a Nursing Home Community Advisory Council, 1 term expiring. The Older Adult Service Advisory Council has 1 term expiring. The Tourism Board has 6 terms expiring, and the Working Waterman Commission has 2 terms expiring. So those are your appointments for the next 90 days. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that would be your agenda.
Thank you, County Manager. That brings us to item 8, Commissioner's Business and Manager's Business. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Tobin if he'd kick it off first.
Well, I had the pleasure of working with a young man, James Elson Myers Jr. He called me up, and he's working on his Eagle Scout badge, and he wanted to interview me about the waterways in North Carolina and also basically about what county commissioners did. So I spent about an hour with him, and it was really a lot of fun. He's really a good, bright young man. Also, this week, I've spent a fair amount of time reviewing the contract between EJE Dredging and Crowley Marine Services for the construction supervision agreement, and that should be executed today. Also, the county sent the reports in to the state on where the monies have been spent and all the accounting for that, for the dredge. That was due October 1st, and all those deadlines were met. But most importantly, and this is kind of a sad note, but I'd like to send, and I know the whole county would like to send prayers and condolences to the Cartwright family. Nate Cartwright, who was the superintendent of the KDH reverse osmosis plant for Dare County, passed away on October 1st. And just my heart and prayer goes out to the family. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple. News of significance, I think, for the county is the vote by the Board of Education to reopen our Dare County schools. I believe it's toward the end of this month with a plan in conjunction with the superintendent and their staff. And I just want to say I am very pleased with that decision. I think it was the right decision, and I thank the board for doing so. Number 2, we have an audit committee today. Am I correct in that, Mr. Clausen, at 11:30? Good. We will be meeting, Commissioner Bateman and I in the audit committee, and go through, frankly, some, I think, very promising financial results and outlook for the county, and that's really a good news item, so I'm pleased with that. On a similar note, some of you may recall I'm on the Albemarle Commission board, And for a number of years, our executive director, Kathy Davidson, represented and served us well. She has, about a year or so ago, year and a half, moved on to another position. And I just received news, it was the Triangle J Council of Government, that Kathy is suffering from thyroid cancer and will be going into have surgery at the end of this month on the 29th. This is a very young lady. And I just want to call out from Dare County that we wish her absolutely the very best and total success on this surgery. This cancer disease keeps popping up everywhere, and we wish her the very best. And finally, small personal note, I just want to say happy anniversary to my wife.
Congratulations.
46 years today.
All right.
All right.
All right.
She's recuperating at home. That's all I have.
Happy anniversary,
Sir.
Commissioner Ross.
Most definitely.
God bless her.
Hard to believe,
Yeah,
46 years
that's
of
awesome.
me. Who
That's
the hell
awesome.
could do that? I mean, honest to God.
Tough woman.
That's an endurance
That's
award.
age, Jim. That's why I said
Jeez.
God bless her.
I get tired of me after 10 minutes, 46 years.
What was she thinking, Rob?
I got, she must have lost a bet.
I love it. Commissioner House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few things I'll bring up. Number one, North Carolina Marine Fisheries has a open public comment web conference on 10/21 and 10/26 at 6 p.m. What they're trying to do is propose rules changes. Every 10 years, they have to kind of go through all the rules and either make amendments or changes to the rules or leave them the same. Some of the things that are definitely concerning as far as the public comments are concerned, or concerning with some of these changes. One of them is shellfish leases. As we know from what we ran into last year, was a 100-feet barrier between any property line and the shellfish lease. They want to increase that from the 100 feet to the 250 feet of a shoreline. And that also changes not only from the property line, but also including the docks, wharfs, boat ramps, bridges, bulkheads, or groinings extending out from that property line. Also no closer than 250 feet from another lease site. So you can't have them so close together. And also they're including the text that they shall not interfere with navigation or existing traditional uses of the area. So that's under the new proposed changes for the shellfish leases. The shellfish growing waters rule, there are 14 rule changes proposed, revamping most of the rule. I was looking at it briefly last night, and the only changes that it did not propose on the whole rule was like 2 sentences of the whole thing. So the whole rule is revamped. So I definitely urge you to go to the Marine Fisheries website, look up the package B for 2020 and 2021, and read through it. Some of the other changes were for the oyster sanctuary rule. Changing the delineations in a lot of the existing oyster sanctuary rules, and also adding 5 new sites to the rule. These 5 sites are already protected by proclamation and are being considered for permanent status. Most of the additions and also for the ones that are already in are seeking to help improve the water quality and the sounds. There is a analysis of proposed special secondary nursery area rule. Most of the changes that are in there are actually corrections to misspelling and words used in the words, misspelling of words and the use of initials defining waters. Adding or changing delineations in areas around Pungo Creek, Scranton Creek, Slade Creek, South Creek, Bond Creek, Newport River, Cape Fear River, Lockwood Follies River, and Saucepan Creek. So I definitely urge all of our commercial fishermen to take a look at that and participate in the open comments. Also, the FDA has proposed a rule on traceability. This is one of the things we've been seeking after, and able to trace our, especially our seafoods, but also our foods in general. And it is open for the public comment until January 21, 2021. And you can go to govinfo.gov and search FDA traceability. It'll pull it up, and then you can relay on your public comments. A lot of the traceabilities that are put on there are including the finfish, crustacean, mollusk, and bivalves, aka oysters, clams, and mussels. But it does not include scallops for some reason. I'm not sure why. There are particular exclusions from food processing through fishing vessels. And if you go to that website and take a look, it further defines exactly what those exceptions are. I strongly urge you to, especially our commercial fishermen and our fish houses that have been asking for a traceability for seafood, to let you know that it is North Carolina fresh caught, or did it come from Thailand? So the FDA is reaching out to do a traceability study to see if they can put that into succession. It's not just for seafood; it's also for other foods that are in our agriculture, like soybeans and corns and things of that nature too. So revamping the whole thing, trying to look at it as a whole. So I would definitely urge you to try to get in that. As we mentioned, it is National Fire Prevention Week, and the theme of it is for kitchen fires, and also leads to our day in history. The United States, the first National Fire Prevention Day proclamation was issued by President Woodrow Wilson in 1920, one day. President Calvin Coolidge proclaimed the first National Fire Prevention Week on October 4th through the 10th, 1925. And you might ask, why in October? Fire Prevention Week is a commemoration of the Great Chicago Fire that burned the American city of Chicago between October 8th and the 10th in 1871. The fire killed approximately 300 people, destroyed roughly 3.3 square miles of the city, and left more than 100,000 residents homeless. So for National Fire Prevention Week, I urge you to check your house, make sure your kitchen is safe, check all of your your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors, make sure they're operating correctly, and check all of your fire extinguishers in your house. Make sure you have one on each level of the house and an extra one in your kitchen. We also mentioned the California fires. I'd like to also add to the fact of Chairman Ward said how many firefighters were out there. Some of our own very Dare County firefighters are out there fighting these fires. So it hits home. We're here, and our guys have gone out to help the California fire departments out there. So keep them and their families in your prayers tonight. And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner House. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say thank you to our service pin recipients for their 105 years of service to Dare County. Thank you so very much. And also to congratulate, once again, James Wooten on his CEM certification. Thank you to all county employees.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Bateman.
Yes, sir. So when they did the video, emergency management, if you had noticed, they had a shot, the foot of the Ordinance Inlet Bridge and all those bulldozers and so forth moving dirt. If you noticed over to the left, if you're looking towards the Bass Knight Bridge, there's a large amount of property that's from the telephone poles that goes clear over to the sound side, and there's vegetation on that. Does it take a rocket scientist to say, once you just move the road over behind the telephone poles, where the vegetation is and do a land bridge there. Didn't we spend $3 million, not the county, but the state last year? If we do that every year, eventually we would pay for that land bridges there. If we could somehow talk to, I know it's not the Department of Transportation, none of it's environmentalists that's holding this thing up.
Yeah.
But it just makes sense to put it where the water's not there.
Well, that's
Seems
the whole
like it.
thing. It makes sense.
Seems like
And
it, or, yeah.
And it's something that has been brought up on
But,
several occasions.
but on that video there,
Yeah.
you saw the, I mean, the
Oh, yeah.
beautiful vegetation
Oh,
over
yeah.
there. And there's a dune back there, a
Yep.
natural dune. And the telephone poles are, and we just keep putting the dirt back in the same hole that's gonna continuously be there until we're all gone, unless we change something.
Write a letter to those 30-some environmental attorneys.
I don't think I have nothing to say to them that'd be helpful.
Several years back, I named them individually here,
Oh, yeah.
so,
But it's it's
But write a
crazy,
letter
if
to
you
them.
look at that. I mean, I'm like, wow.
Southern Environmental Law Center.
I
Yeah.
think Commissioner Bateman should spearhead our efforts to bring sanity to this ever-evolving issue. Commissioner Couch?
You're asking somebody in the restaurant, you're asking
Put the
somebody,
bridge moms on them.
There you go.
you're asking somebody in the restaurant business who's gotta be crazy to be in the restaurant business anyway, to bring sanity to somebody else.
Your suggestion makes perfect sense, sir.
The other, I saw on the news this morning that there were 82 firemen that lost their lives, Steve, in North Carolina last year.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
That's-
82?
That's crazy.
I didn't see
crazy.
that.
Dangerous business.
I know, that's just, that's, I mean, we thank them every day for what they do, and we really
I had no
appreciate
Yeah,
idea.
it.
like I said, I spent, over 30 years in the fire service, and I can tell you, each year, it gets worse and worse.
Steve,
Wow.
let me just follow on that if I could, or where or how is the highest propensity for that? I'm astonished. I didn't see the story. Is it houses that collapse on them, or?
It's in a range of different things. I mean, if you look at the fire service as a whole, it's not just firefighting. They handle a wide range of everything. It can be anywhere from being run over by a car at an accident scene.
Yeah.
If you know, one of our North Carolina representatives, Michael Speciale,
I know
his
Mike.
granddaughter was hit by a car. She's recovering right now, but it's situations like that also come into play. And also, a good part of it too is also from heart attacks and stuff like that while fighting a fire. So it can
That's
go
still,
from
I
that
mean-
to full range of
I
accidental
had no idea.
things. Yeah.
Honestly, if you'd said 10, I'd have believed that. 82,
I saw it, and
I'm
I
stunned.
couldn't, it just astounded me.
Wow.
Happens every year.
The other thing the last thing I got, we lost, Ricky Scarborough. Ricky
Yes.
Scarborough, boat builder.
Yeah.
He trained and worked under Tillett for years, and then he started his own company. I think the company's been in business like 40-some years, and his sons now are carrying on with that. But, nice guy, and, he built a really crafty boat. So, that's,
Oh, yeah, beautiful boats.
that's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Couch.
Yes, sir. Hatteras Island continues to be quite the economic juggernaut going on here. The kite boarders are down now. This is their time of year, and they're there in force. And it's a good thing. They're spenders. The fish are thick. You can just about walk on them. Hope all you fishermen are listening. Come on down. Fishermen and fisherwomen. Looking forward to a really strong shoulder season down there. I've had an opportunity to be part of the Cape Hatteras United Methodist Men and the trailer raising project that they're doing down there. As you know, trailers do not qualify for FEMA funds to be raised out of the flood zone, but we've raised 4 down there. We should have a total of 10. And that money comes from a grant from the Outer Banks Community Foundation. The first one was $250,000, and we're looking at another round. Yeah, there's been to come. There's been a lot of volunteers turning out, and you know, it's not just go and raising a trailer. You have to have stamped engineering foundation plans, a lot of carpentry work, the specialized skills, the raising of these things, crumb works, Endurance Marine, these guys, they're doing it at cost, the heating and air contractors, so it's really an amazing thing. I will always marvel at the nonprofits and the charitable mindset of our community. It's pretty much unmatched, particularly for an area our size. Good news on the child care front. I know Commissioner Ross and myself and Vice Chairman Overman have been working on the long-term future for child care here in the county. And it's, we're not in a good place right now. And just because of the fact these kids they've missed a year. Come February, they will have missed an entire year of those critical growth years between age and birth from birth to 5 years of age. But I've had some positive news. One longstanding business down there has managed to get open. The fire marshal has been in there. CYP has been able to provide training. So hopefully that's going to relieve a lot of that pressure and stress. And last, I want to, actually a couple more things, if you will. And Irvin, thank you for bringing up Captain Scarborough there. One of the neat little things about our history and heritage here, I don't know if you realize it, but when I was in the newspaper business, I was up on the Eastern Shore of Virginia and saw that they were having the Scarborough family reunion over there. So I marched right on over there. So we got Scarboroughs where I'm from. I'm going on over there. And the company that I worked for, the young lady that was writing the story at that time, she had a great story on that family reunion, and this was her opening paragraph of her story. The Scarboroughs didn't just come to the New World on the Mayflower. Her next line said, they owned her. And I looked into that. And it turns out that the Scarborough family, our Scarboroughs here on the Outer Banks, were responsible for the leading shipwrights in Devon, England, responsible for both Mayflowers, the 1620 and the 1624 Mayflowers that came here. You couldn't get anything done to an extent in Devon and Plymouth without the leading shipwright clan was the Scarborough family. So I think it's very appropriate. Ricky Sr., he was a nice guy. He had all those classic bloodlines that just when it came to shipbuilding and boat building, boatwright, he really knew what he's doing. And as Irvin said about the Carolina Flare, you know, the common sense that comes out of our boat building guys here never ceases to amaze me. You look at the wide gunnels and the working surface that we had on the George Washington Creek shad boat. That's the state boat. And then who would have thought that something in dealing with heavy seas on a sport fisherman, just by flaring your bow out there to displace water as you're working your way through either Oregon Inlet or Hatteras, Ocracoke, name the inlet. It's just an amazing thing, and how effective that was. So thank you for bringing up Ricky. His service, I believe, is today at 5. Is that tomorrow at 5 at Wanchi's Assembly. And last but not least, I know we've been monitoring the Register of Deeds collection reports, and I just ran some figures here. The report for September and land transfer tax fees, the month of September, we are up over 60% from this time, from this month last year. And then overall, we are 20% over to year to date. And it's just, we're just getting into the last quarter of 2020 now. So, I mean, what a year it has been in sales and vacation rentals. So there's been an upside to 2020, I suppose. I'm not sure there's much more to add to that other than we're getting a lot of visitation, but that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have a feeling, a ballpark of what it totally cost to raise one of those trailers?
20 grand.
20 grand. So that 250 can go a long way.
Oh, absolutely. 20 grand with the fact that these guys are doing it at cost. And it's, you know, honestly, the participation that I'm doing with the tool belt out there, I mean, I'm 60 years old. I can't keep up with a lot of these guys. But the camaraderie, those type things, I mean, Jim, I enjoy seeing your pictures of the remodel you've done. That's how you get the weight of the world off your shoulders. Just grab a tool belt and go out there and listen to the salty language while they're banging. It is the Methodist men, but while they're banging and sawing. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
It's a phenomenal thing. There was a good story done on it, Mr. Chairman, but there's going to be more to come. We're going to get another round of funding from the Community Foundation, and thank you to the Community Foundation. They never asked more than just a couple of questions and signed off on that immediately.
That's super. Thank you. County Manager?
Yes, sir, I have several things. First on my list, Dominion Power has asked us for an easement at the animal shelter that runs from Airport Road along that boundary between the animal shelter and the EOC. It's roughly, I don't know, 500 feet long, but it runs all the way down that property line, and then it turns to the right and goes a little bit behind the building to connect onto it. And I need your approval to sign the easement that they've requested so we can get the power run in there.
Motion by the board? Motion by Vice Chairman, seconded by Commissioner Bateman and House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Secondly, several meetings ago, we approved the sale of that little triangle piece of property on the side of the COA site to Bricks LLC, which is the owner of that building, the red brick building on the corner. We've done all the statutory things. We've advertised it and run an upset time and all that. There were no upset bids. So I need you all to approve their bid of $15,000 and authorize me to sign the deed conveying that property to Bricks LLC.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Commissioner Couch, and it's been seconded by the Vice Chairman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And then similarly, you all have approved moving forward with the sale of that piece of property out on the point at Buxton Harbor to Burris, which is the property owner that adjoins that. Similarly, all that paperwork has been done. The upset period has now expired, and I need you to approve that bid of $20,000 and authorize me to sign the deed conveying that property as well.
Motion on the floor by the Vice Chairman, seconded by Commissioner Tobin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And then the last thing I may have mentioned to some of you, there's a gentleman named Mr. Redden that owns a piece of property down in the Merlo Beach area that his house was on that property and it was washed away by the Atlantic Ocean, and he's got a remnant piece of property there. He would like to donate that to the county in his mind as an access. I talked to the chairman about it several weeks ago, and he asked me to go take a look at it. So I drove down there and rode out on it. The road that gets out to it, and on my little map, it's too small, I can't read the name of it, is, still can't read the name of it. It goes out, and it's a marl road, it's a private road, it's unimproved, it's got potholes in it, they were full of water, and there's no parking or anywhere for that. If we took that property as an access, there'd be nowhere, we'd be inviting people to access the beach with nowhere to put their cars or park or do anything. The oceanfront part of that, the ocean today was right up to the houses that were left, so there was very little of this lot left. Maybe in a normal summer, there might be a little bit of beach there, but not much. And so it seems to me that, at least from my view, that we shouldn't be inviting people down there to access that property when they're gonna have to park in front of other people's property or in their driveways or wherever to get to it. We have our Rodanthe Beach access is not even a quarter of a mile to the north of that. And if we think we need more access than that, then someone did donate an oceanfront parcel that goes back into the highlands a little bit with a paved road already there several years ago, a little in between our current access and this piece of property. So unless you all tell me different, my intention is to tell him that we appreciate his generous offer, but it's not something that we think we can use or that we should be inviting the public down to use that property.
Do you need a motion on that?
Not unless you want me to do something different than I just said. Okay. Then that's the direction that I'll go, and I told him that I would bring it up to you all at this meeting, and if you were interested, you'd tell me. So with that, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, County Manager. I appreciate that. Ms. Hester, our Public Information Officer, you have anything today? Thank you. Thank you very much. Finance Director, Mr. Clausen, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Then with that being said, we need a motion to adjourn until October 19 at 5 p.m.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner House. It's been seconded by
Me.
Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.